Howard Turner from the Salem Historical Society and Richard Noyce from the Salem Observer is at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Paul Garabedian of Salem Street to interview them a little about their life history and the construction business which he is now in with his family. Now, Paul, you might give the early history of the settlement and your parents and grandparents and how they happened to settle here on Salem Street and anything you want to tell about them.
Well, my grandfather and his brother settled here at Salem Street sometime, I guess, around 1895. And they bought about 400 to 500 acres in this area on Salem Street, including Salem and Massachusetts. One brother took one side of the road and the other brother took the other side of the road of Salem Street. And as the families grew up and got married, they split some of the farm up. The boys, my father took one section of the farm, and my uncle took another section of the farm. My aunt had another section of the farm, and they all became market gardeners on Salem Street here. And Salem was probably considered one of the largest market gardening sections in the south part of Salem, and most of their stuff was sold in Lawrence, and later on when trucks were available, they shipped a lot of this stuff right into Boston, and they were highly recognized in Boston with the fruit and vegetables that they grew right here in Salem.
I think you told me one time also that in the summer it used to be a great hobby of the Lawrence people to come up here and buy their own vegetables along their market garden products alongside them.
Oh, yeah.
And that really was kind of the beginning of Route 28, driving up here to buy the vegetables.
Yes, on 28, yeah. But they also, some of the farmers used to sell right from the farms.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
With bushels of tomatoes when it came canning time, or apples to store. Well, Howard could tell you there was a lot of Baldwin apples, russet apples, and they used to store them in barrels and keep them cold, and they'd have them for the winter months. There wasn't cold storage like there is today, so they used to put them in somewhere cold, and then they'd have apples all winter long. And
that's right.
Pies, they used to make pies. Baldwin's used to make great pies.
Oh, yeah.
And you said there were apples on this farm.
Oh, yes. They on this farm here, they must have been close to, as far as both brothers, they must have been, I don't know, probably 2,000 apple trees on the whole farm here. But my father had probably 400 or 500 or 600 apple trees of his own here on his piece of ground.
And all the farming in that time was done with horses.
Oh, yeah, they all had horses, and some of them had 2 horses, and some of them had 1, and they had as many as 3 horses. And in the summer months, they did their market gardening, and then in the winter, they bought wood lots and cut wood, and probably had 200 or 300 cords of wood here, and they'd take it into Lawrence, split it, sell it, and that's what they did. And if the weather was too bad, well, they'd get together and play a little card, pass the time that way.
Now, you folks went to school where on this street? Or everybody went, I believe, to the number 8 school.
That's right. There was a wooden frame building, and there was 4 grades downstairs and 4 grades upstairs.
That's right.
And
Fill me in, is number 8 where Dr. Sewell's school is now? Yeah.
Yes.
That's correct.
But there was that's the 3rd school that was in that spot. The old number 8, the one-room building I started in. There was a one-room building right near the cold storage plant there, which is now Jim's.
Yeah.
Cacciatorians. There's one-room building there right near the street, and we had a schoolyard, well, probably 100 feet wide, I guess about 100 feet square for that matter. And as evidence of the size of the schoolyard, all you have to do is to go up on Haverhill Road and Captain Pond. On the corner there's the stone walls of what used to be number 2 school, and it shows you the size of the lot. In fact, there were 2 locations for school up in that area. So we had very small schoolyards in those days. We went to school to study, I guess.
No time to play.
No, not so much. It was a real day of schooling. Now, after graduating from the what we call the number 8 school, what did you go into then?
Well, I still worked on the farm. I guess it was until about 1934. 1934 was the first truck I bought, and I worked on Route 28 when they put the shoulders, 3-foot shoulders on this concrete road to widen 28. And I used to work there during the day, and at night I'd take the truck and go into Boston with vegetables, and that's how the stuff was sold from the farm, was taking it into Boston, or my father would take the truck and go to Lawrence, and that was it. But in, I would say about 1935, 5 or 6, I bought an international truck, and I had 2 trucks at that time.
So that was the beginning of your people.
Yeah.
I was beginning. Now, you were the first one to really start commercial development on Route 28. And about what time was that? And where was the construction started?
Well, I got married about in 37.
You might tell us who you married and where she came from.
I married Veronica Gamrigan, and she came from Paterson, New Jersey. And
See, and you told me how you got acquainted with her.
well, I acquainted at a church convention.
You were really a good boy in those days.
Well, I was a good boy in those days. I'm probably not as good now as I was.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, but it's kind of interesting to note that quite a number of young people used to get acquainted with each other and marry from church outings and groups and
This convention was in New Jersey?
No, this was in Salem, New Hampshire.
In Salem. So you
And-
did come from New Jersey to Salem.
Well, how we got acquainted was her mother came to the Salem church, representing the Paterson church, and my mother and her mother knew each other from the old country.
Oh, deep rooted. Big brother.
His mother didn't know that he had a girl, and my mother didn't know that she had a boy.
So when she went back, Veronica was coming down to which she had an aunt that was married here in Boston, and they had a dance here, AGBU dance, was it, in Haverhill? So the nearest place was Salem, so she came to Salem, and that's when I first met her.
Good
So
enough.
she came at the house.
Now, after marriage, and you had how many children? And tell us a little about what they are doing and what schooling they had.
Well, we had 3 children. The oldest one is Charles, and he went to number 8 school and finished Woodbury High School, and that was his extent of schooling, and he's been in the business with me ever since. And my middle son, Paul Jr., he went to number 8, graduated Woodbury, and went to MCI prep school, and went to Wentworth Institution in Boston, and Franklin, graduated Wentworth, and also went to Arizona State and graduated there on an engineering course, and now is the engineer of the firm.
Well, that's pretty good. Now, let's see, you have some more children here.
I have one more. I can't leave him out. He's the baby of the family. And
Wait, is this the baby?
That's the baby
That's right
there.
What part does he take in this construction business?
Well,
He's your accountant?
no, he is not accountant. He's runs the shovel, and he runs a job pretty well.
Oh.
And he's a real good hustler. He took in general business in college, and he is running the shovel at the present time.
Well, it
And
takes a
can
good
run any
man to
piece
get...
of- He can run any piece of equipment I own, so he's an all-around man.
Good enough.
Name
Good.
is Jack. You didn't get that in the record. Now,
Well-
Jack is for your grandfather. No, your father.
My father.
His
His,
grandfather.
yeah,
Jack.
that's how he was named.
I see. And the construction on Route 28, really, Anna Noyes started a housing development just off Route 28, within sight of it, and I believe you had something to do with laying out or working on the layout of that.
Well, I put in all that subdivision for Anna Noyes down there on off on 28, and it was the first time I bought land on 28 was due to that I didn't have any spot to dump some of the concrete and steel and material that I was tearing down in Lawrence and the Arlington Mill at the time, and I came down to Mr. Kelly and told him if he would sell me that piece of land where Butcher Boys is, and he said, well, it isn't very good, but I'll sell it to you anyway. So I bought it from Arthur Kelly, and I had a fellow by the name of Leo Tatoyan, and I used to say, well, take it up there and dump it, and Leo was working for me at the time, and Leo says, Mrs. Garabedian, you know, some damn fool turned around and bought a piece of land over here on 28, and Jesus, I don't know why they paid that kind of money, but they're dumping some stuff over there, and you're dumping it right on his land, and my wife would never tell him I bought it, and soon, I think it was about 6 months later, Leo found out that I owned it, and he didn't know what to say. Now when he sees my wife, he always says, well, I guess I was a damn fool. You wasn't a damn fool. That is how I got
Back in the days of, Anna Noyes development, Anna and Ben Noyes development, and then later Mel Marsh's, you must obviously have done a lot of the work because you must have owned the only equipment there was in town back in those days.
Well, yes, I think,
Yeah, the big equipment.
as far as the dozers were, they was only Louis Sear and Lewis and Scott. Lewis and Scott and Pat Holland was the only ones that had dozers. There was only 4 dozers in Lawrence, and there was nothing in Salem around this area as far as a dozer was.
So you really were the pioneer in that.
That's right.
Was Sear operating here before you?
Sear was operating in Lawrence.
Yeah, well, we had this Sear come up and clear one of those fields where the glider port is now. I don't remember if you had a dozer at that time.
Oh yes, that glider port is.
Well, I mean, that was long before the
Yeah.
glider port.
Yeah.
Doyle had another man for that. I don't know who that. I didn't have anything to do with that. But Sear was back in, must have been 1920 or before.
Yeah, but he probably had a tractor there because I bought one of the first bulldozers, which was a 3-cylinder Cap 40 diesel engine,
Yeah.
and a hydraulic blade. They did have cable, but they didn't have hydraulic.
Yeah.
That was about one of the earliest machines that was built in hydraulic. I think that would be about a 19 34 bulldozers.
Well, this one of Sears, he spent more time working on it than he did pushing out stumps.
I remember what you're talking. It used to be an old cable winch. They had a
Yeah.
winch on there, and it was a cable blade, and he used to drop the blade down. It was just like a handbrake. He'd pull the thing up, and
I don't know, but he had a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
You told me one time, too, that when you bought that first bulldozer, your friends thought you were kind of crazy.
That was my cousin Carl. I bought it, and I never forget it. I bought it, and I unloaded it right down here in the field. And my cousin Carl come up to me, and he says, "My God," he says, "I don't know what you're going to do with that machine." And I can remember when I bought that machine, nobody knew what a bulldozer would do, and nobody knew what it could do. So Pat Holland had one, and Rockingham Racetrack was straightening the infield at the time, and Pat had his bulldozer with one cylinder in the back. His was a older machine than mine. Mine was a newer machine because mine had two cylinders. And he had a fellow by the name of Perpetuate that was running it, which he worked for me later on. And this machine, he couldn't do too much to straighten that infield. And then I went to work. George Hafey was the fellow that took me up there at Cannibal Lake, and I worked up there when we put this water line through there at Cannibal Lake Park. And that was, as far as price was on the bulldozer, I think I was getting about $4 or $5 an hour for that machine, and I used to move it on a regular truck, a platform truck. There was no low beds at that time that was built like they were. You would have to have it a ramp or something so that you could get on and off. And we were 3-4 feet off the ground when we'd move them.
Oh, yes. It's quite a problem moving them in those days. Now, what are some of the other construction jobs you tackled in Salem? I believe you built the new pumping station at Cannibal Lake.
Yeah, the water job in Salem here, when they put this out on bids for a new pumping station and about 3 miles of water line, we bid that. We were the lowest bidder on that. We put the big 16-inch pipe. That was the biggest pipe the town had got, and I think that is still the biggest water line that the town has until today. As a matter of fact, I think it was last year, 2 years ago. Was it last year, Junior, that we repaired the line? They didn't have anything to repair the line with. We still repaired that because we have the cutters and the stuff for that. And
Where is the 16-inch line?
16-inch line runs from the old pumping station down Rockingham Road and across the railroad track, underneath the railroad track, and goes down onto 28, and then it drops down to a 12-inch line that runs all the way from 28 down to runs through School Street, down across Main Street and under the Spigot River, and stops somewhere on Bridge Street, just about where Bardwell's shoe shop used to be, right? Or just before that, that's where it stops.
Say, I have a question that occurs to me. Was it in that time that you got interested in that land that you developed so handsomely up there with all the houses off Rockingham Road?
Rockingham Road?
Yeah. A lot of that development in there is Garabedian development, isn't it?
No. Was it?
Where
Gage Farm?
Well,
he means where Butterfield is.
Yeah.
Well, I cut the streets in there for Butterfield.
Yeah.
I did a lot of the subdivision in there. I mean, I didn't do any of the building. That was Butterfield that did the building, but I did all the street work in there.
There's a Veronica Street up there. I've always imagined that was for Mrs. Garabedian.
Oh, that was later on, which is Wooded Knolls.
Yeah, that's what I'm...
Off in Pleasant Street down there, we still have, I think there's probably, well, that used to be a farmhouse with a chicken, a barn with where they raised chickens in there. And I made the apartments down there on Wooded Knolls, and then I put the subdivision in there, and that's named Veronica Avenue and Lucille Avenue and Peggy Lane.
Right.
Well, that is one of the subdivisions which we have now in Salem, and we will complete that this year when we're going to put in sewerage and then finish everything up this year up there. We're going to try to finish
Where's
it.
that development located?
That's off on Pleasant Street.
Pleasant Street?
Yeah.
Policy
Policy.
Street.
Policy,
Oh,
that's right.
yes, I know
Right, going
now.
up the hill.
Yeah, up the
Yeah.
hill, down.
Well, I said Rockingham Boulevard because you can get, I mean, Rockingham Road, because you can get from Rockingham Road up to it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
you can now. They've broken through the street from the Gage Farm into, or the Tenney Farm into,
They are breaking through it now. Right around now, they're getting through it.
This side of the Tenny Farm though, isn't it?
Yeah.
yeah, Gage, that'd be the old Gage
Yeah.
Farm.
Gage
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now that gets you somewhere near up to date. And today you have how much equipment? Or you might tell us what your peak equipment year was.
Well, I mean, I would say probably my peak equipment when I first started really got going and pretty good was about in 1947. We probably have a lot more equipment now, but in them days with the equipment we had in comparison, we had a lot more equipment then than we have now.
Yes.
We have probably bigger equipment and better equipment now, but as far as dozers, I had more dozers in 1947 than I do right now. Because primarily what we were doing a lot of cellar work and a lot of house building and a lot of landscaping and a lot of federal housings, and we had a project in Waltham that lasted 7 years up there. We built 500 houses in Waltham. So I mean, and then in '52 we had federal housing here in Lawrence, and then matter of fact, I put in the North Andover athletic field up there, and I put in the football field in 1955, and that's when I decided to come back into Salem. That's when I left mostly Massachusetts and then thought I'd come into Salem and work in the state of New Hampshire. And that's when I bought land on Route 28, was probably in 1954. And that's when 55 I built Butcher Boy, in 56 I built Allen's, and in 57 I put in the Simon's Discount House, which was probably the biggest building that was on 28.
It was at that time.
And then I put in probably one of the modernest markets there, which was Sampson's Market up there, where Hoffman's is right
That's on
now.
the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. That used to be Sampson's, and I built that. I think that was in 1963, 64, something like that. And then Howard Johnson come along and wanted me to put up a building for Howard Johnson, so I put up a building for Howard Johnson, which is now Bobby Lou's up there.
Yes, I see that it's changed hands. It were originally Howard Johnson's, and evidently they didn't do too well there.
Well, no, I don't think so. They put too many of them around. They got one on 93 here and one in Havel, so that Route 28 they just used to bypass.
That's right.
That site's had its problems, but it's doing well now. It's a pleasure to go there now.
Oh yeah,
Which one's that?
Bob Blue.
Oh, I don't know.
they're doing tremendous down there. Mrs. Blue has been after me for the last month to make that place bigger. She says we just got to have room. That's all. And,
You had, you spoke that you did the athletic field for the Salem High School, and also the track, and I was in Exeter today and talked with one of the former track coaches over there, and they are quite envious of the Salem track, saying we had one of the best round for a high school.
well, that's a good track up there. I mean, it's they got a good football field there. It's a little low, but I mean it's got a a lot of drainage in. If they keep the drainage up, they won't have any problems with the field or their...
That was the question that occurred to me when you was talking about that earlier. That really must have been a low area when you started out. If you put that, you told me how much, you said how much fill you put in there.
I forget what it is, but I do have records of it, but I think that there was close to 80 or 90,000 yards of fill that went in.
Yeah, if you put in that much fill, that must have been a real low area when you started.
Well, they started, when they first started, they had an awful lot of problems there with water when the old Woodbury School was there.
Yes, well, matter of fact, I can remember when Pat Holland was building the old Woodbury School athletic field down there. I had 2 dozers down there, and he had a shovel, and we flattened that Woodbury school area, that site. They didn't have much of a football field, but we leveled that off, and then later on I worked for the town for probably a month and a half, and pushed that whole top area down, and they made quite a field out of it, but they didn't have any drainage in the old original school, so they were having a lot of problem as far as being wet. But the new athletic field that they got pretty good drainage in there, and if they maintain it up a little, the drainage system should work very well in there.
Yes, it's made a very good field when the new Salem High School was built. Wasn't too good before that time. Now, you have, what have you for present equipment?
Well, we have a D8, D6, and we got a couple of smaller dozers. We have 4 dozers now. We have a new corn we just bought. It's a fully hydraulic. We also have a cable rig. And we got another smaller hydraulic rig. We have low bed. We have compressor trucks. We got 10-wheelers. I don't know. We got just about anything that you want.
You're set up today to do most any type of construction and earth-moving job that anybody would want.
Well, we can do just about most anything we want, or if we haven't got it, we'll rent some of it and do it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm sure that this interview has given us a few facts that we can incorporate in our history, and also to give us a good idea what a local man can do and could do in Salem. I think it's a good example of a successful business enterprise. And this street here, Salem Street, seems to have a monopoly on the construction business, because we have not only Paul Garabedian and his company with his whole family helping him, but we have his brother Nash Garabedian, who is presently one of the larger hot top contractors in the area. And then lately, the Haraya Nigerian, who lives on the same side of the Salem Street as these other 2, is with the Andover Construction Company. So you can see what a group of people can do if they have the ambition. And I think you'll note that this Armenian settlement in Salem has brought up a lot of ambitious young men, and as far as I know, there haven't been hardly any of them involved in any wrongdoings in the town. They've been a great addition to Salem. And I wish to thank Mr. and Mrs. Paul Garabedian and their family for this interview. It's been very interesting. And I think that will complete what we want.